Hey there, you're listening to Not Know the TV podcast. This is episode 52, the week of July 12th, 2024. My name is Drew Koenig. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mads Snessy. Mads, how we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I made myself tacos for dinner, and it was very tasty.
Nice.
I had some tacos, and I made myself a margarita. So I'm finally on the other end of, like, the money problems. So I'm like, oh, I can just, like, cook and buy things and not stress myself out.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I like cooking. I like cooking for myself, and I like making things. It's just not something I've been able to do the last few months. So I'm like, yes, finally eating productively.
That's awesome.
Instead of just like buying bags of pizza rolls and being like, yes, this will get me through for the week.
I mean, I do that with Dino Nuggies, so I get it.
Right, yeah.
I'm a diabetic with the diet of a 6-year-old child that never extended their palate, and it's like, oh, this is bad.
But anyway, how's your week been?
It's been rough. I deal with depression, and this has just been a bad week. It also doesn't help that July is just a weird month for me because I lost a lot of family members throughout the years in the month of July. I'm not sure what it is about July in my family, but like
Right.
It sucks. So like it's just been a rough week, and then we started a new project at work, and that's always stressful because meeting a new client, getting on their wavelength doesn't seem like that stressful of a situation, but for someone who has to write all the content for their website, it's very frustrating and stressful, especially if it's an industry I'm not familiar with, which this customer is in the financial advisor industry, and I know nothing about that. I'm like, I wish I had enough money to need a financial advisor, but I don't have that luck in life.
No, I get that.
And also, they're like specific to Black African American individuals, and it's just like, okay, so I'm a white person, and I'm gonna really fuck this up, and I know I am. So yeah, it's been a week. It's been a week.
But you know, you can only go up from here.
This is true. This is true. I had pad thai for dinner, and that was very wonderful. And that is a positive note on my week.
So let's jump into some news real quick. Our first piece of news here is that Apple TV announced the return of Severance, which has been off the air since, I believe, it premiered April 2022, and it is set to return January of 2025. Now, for those of you keeping score at home, that's 3 years. That's nearly 3 years.
It started in February of 2022.
Okay.
And went off the air in April. So yeah, it's nearly 3 years.
Nearly 3 years. That's too long. What reality of television are we living in? This is nightmarish. It's hellish. 3 years between seasons is too long. No. I
think with the show like Severance, the characters are all adults, so it's not as noticeable that time has passed. But like shows like Stranger Things, where you have a majority of a cast being children, taking 3 or 4 years in between, they're going to be old people by the time you finish the show. But the other thing I was thinking about was they released the trailer for the final season of The Umbrella Academy this week. And I was thinking about it because one of the siblings was stuck in time for a long time. And when he came back into the current timeline, he was still a child. And he's supposed to technically remain childlike for the majority of the plot lines, right? The guy that plays him is now old enough, and it looks like he's no longer a child. So it's like, this time between seasons is ridiculous. We need to cut back on this because Umbrella Academy could have been done and over with like 3 years ago if they had done it one every year. Like, Love the show. Too much time in between seasons. Good Omens has the same problem. There was 4 years between seasons 1 and 2, and I'm just like, why?
The first season of Severance was great.
So good.
Some of the best TV of that year. 3 years is unconscionable.
It was a thriller series that, like, literally had me guessing every week. I was just like, what exactly is going on?
Mm-hmm.
And we still don't fully know what's going on. So we've had to wait 3 years to find out.
Yeah. I don't know what we're doing here.
It's not a good trend. Just like we've said that the whole dropping every episode at once trend is not good, this waiting multiple years between seasons is also not good.
No. But anyway, Severance is going to die for second season. Another thing I wanted to mention here, I want to preface this by saying I'm aware this is something I would not normally talk about. But,
Ooh.
So the TCAs have been happening this week. As we record this, I think they're on their second or third day. Hallmark had a panel, which I found rather intriguing, where they announced that they are launching their own subscription service.
Wait, Hallmark?
Hallmark.
Interesting.
I think it's like $7.99 or something.
I'm curious as to why, considering a lot of their programming is currently on Peacock.
I think there's a charitable view and there's a non-charitable view. I don't know how to not say the non-charitable view, which is that a lot of people who watch Hallmark, not all, but a decent contingent of their viewership are older conservative people.
That's true.
Who are not incredibly savvy.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
So I think this could be an attempt by Hallmark to really consolidate all of their stuff into one easy to find place. But also, this is something, because I have family members who watch a lot of Hallmark. Like my mom consistently watches Hallmark. My sisters watch it. And something that I hear from them is that sometimes it can be hard to find some Hallmark movies that either have come out or will come out.
So I was going to add in, the only thing I really consistently watch on Hallmark is I haven't stayed caught up in the last couple years just because there's so much television, it's really hard. But when it first started airing, When Calls the Heart was something that really just was something I watched every week, whatever. But now I can't even go back and rewatch it without paying an exorbitant amount of money for each season because they only have the last 4 seasons on Peacock, or I think you might be able to get it on Prime too. But it's you can't watch the first few seasons because it's nowhere to be found. I'm like, I really hope with this new subscription service that means we can find all the seasons of When Calls the Heart so I can go back and do a rewatch.
Right. Yeah, and the big point here, which I think does lend to the overall purpose of Hallmark, is it will be launching in the fall, just in time for Christmas, which is 90% of
their bread and butter.
Yeah, what they do and why people watch and why people will subscribe to this. Not just
currently, right now, it is July, so therefore they're doing Christmas in July.
Right. This is maybe one of the few platforms where I would say there is a good reason for this to exist.
You're not wrong. You're right. I initially reacted with my whole chest of streamer exhaustion to be like, why do we need another streaming service? But you have made valid points that this would actually be very beneficial for the Hallmark channel. So
yeah. So let's move on into the GOAT. The GOAT is a weekly segment we do here on the podcast where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode of all time. So we are still catching up over here. We're a couple weeks behind, but our last completed GOAT of Santana from Glee versus Oliver from How to Get Away with Murder. Santana officially won that one.
Not surprising.
So we can put that notch up. And so our theme for this week was in honor of House of the Dragon. Our best TV character or episode from a fantasy series. So that's since you lost the last goat. Hit me with your pick for this week. And note that we still both have 2 vetoes on the board.
Completely valid. All right. So we talked about this last week, like when we were talking about fantasy shows that either had dragons or could have had dragons. That's how we determined, what we would pick from this, right?
Right.
Okay, so I immediately was like, oh, Merlin, because I watched Merlin as it aired back in the day. I went through all the queer baiting that happened with that show. Like, I lived it, but yet I wasn't so disappointed by it in the end that I can't watch it now. And there are certain episodes that I go back and I watch over and over and over again. And one of my absolute favorite episodes from Merlin is season 4, episode 6, A Servant of Two Masters. And the reason I love this episode and the reason why I picked this episode is because it really showcases how much Merlin means to Arthur, but also how ridiculous and obnoxious the hiding magical powers / magic ends up being in any plot line on this show. And it's shown so strongly with this episode because Morgana gets a hold of Merlin and embeds this serpent thing in his neck that convinces him the only thing he needs to worry about is killing Arthur Pendragon. And so as the episode pursues, he goes on this quest to find different ways to kill his master / best friend. And so he's having to listen to Arthur telling him what to do as his manservant, but also like having to deal with this serpent in his brain that's saying the only thing you need to worry about is killing Arthur Pendragon. And he is the worst assassin on the planet. Like, he just does not know how to kill somebody, even when it's the only thing he's supposed to be doing. So it's one of the most hilarious episodes of television I've ever seen. It's very heartwarming, and it just showcases everything that is great about Merlin. And it has probably one of the best throwaway lines on the planet. Merlin is in his quarters with Gaius, and he says to Gaius, well, I think I'm going to take this with me. You never know when you have to kill somebody. And as he walks out the door, Gaius goes, indeed. Like, what is going on here? Why is he taking Acolyte with him? Like, but it's just a really funny episode. And so that's the one I wanted to nominate this week. Merlin, season 4, episode 6, A Servant of Two Masters.
Nice. So, I said last week that to nominate Game of Thrones would be an easy, lazy move, that we are better than.
Uh-huh.
I think we all knew that I was lying, and that I am, in fact, not better than that. So, my pick for this week is Game of Thrones, Season 1, Episode 9, entitled Baelor. And I think the thing that really makes this episode notable, besides, like, a lot of other notable, really good shit in this episode, is the way that no one was at all prepared for it. The thing that makes it notable is the last moments of it that entirely break unwritten TV mores, that completely undo and subvert what we expect from television. Because common sense when you're watching a show is the really bad thing can't happen. The really bad thing can't happen. Something will happen. There will be Deus Ex Machina or some plot invention, and Game of Thrones, at least in its first few seasons, I would say like 4 seasons and change, was not that show. It was a show that didn't pull punches, and it was admirable in that. That was the thing that would eventually degrade and devolve over time and become what we knew in its final episodes. But as Game of Thrones was in the beginning, and especially in this first season, when everyone was trying to figure out Game of Thrones, especially people who had not read the books, of what is this show and what is it capable of, this episode shows what it is capable of, and it primes you for this violence of Ned Stark losing his head.
Yeah.
Through little acts of cruelty throughout the episode, of like, oh, like in one scene, graphically killing Khal Drogo's horse and making you watch that in all of its brutality, and letting you sit with that, and that kind of priming you for like what is to come, and getting you in that mindset of like so deeply upsetting you that horse's death, and sitting with like everything going on with Khal Drogo and everything, like all of Daenerys's reactions to that, and overall like a very good performance from Emilia Clarke in this episode in particular. And then like just kind of letting you keep that until the end, letting you stay in that tension, and like the episode knowing that will still be on your mind. The brazenness of that shot of Ned losing his head is so deeply haunting. Where like, and then like you have shots of like Arya being able to see it, and then Sansa freaking out on the side, and like even Cersei in a moment of shock, like, and it all works so beautifully well. And like its moment of chaos and violence is so wonderfully well done. So that is my submission for the gut this week.
Nice. I still can't watch the end of that episode without like turning my eyes away while I listen to it.
Yeah. There were a number of Game of Thrones episodes I could have picked. Like, I think I could have picked like any number of like big battle episodes, but this felt like Game of Thrones at like its peak, at like some of its most potent strength.
This was them saying, "This is who we are. You're gonna have to get used to this."
Right. Yes. For me, it was this or the Red Wedding. And
which that, oh my gosh, I knew something big happened at the Red Wedding, but I didn't spoil because I didn't watch Game of Thrones until 2020.
Right.
And so I like binged all of it not long after the show ended. And or around the time it was ending, whatever. But I'd heard on, rumors on the interwebs about the Red Wedding, and I knew something big and shocking happens at the Red Wedding, but I was like, I don't know whose wedding is the Red Wedding. I don't know who is involved in any of the plot points. I don't know what's going on. I was like, so I still went into it somewhat blind, and I was devastated by that episode.
The crazy thing about the Red Wedding is it is even more brutal than the books, because the books, in the book, Rob's wife does not go to the Red Wedding, and so like she is still like alive, as far as I know, in like the books right
now. Oh,
like she's
oh dear,
she's definitely like I know she was in like the 4th or 5th book.
Oh, that's so sad.
But they're like, yeah, we can make this even worse.
We could have kept her alive.
And we chose not to.
At that point, yeah, killing her was mercy. Just like, no one else is alive, we might as well just let you go too.
Yeah.
They're like, how do we get rid of the entire Stark family? I know, let's get them all in the same place and just stab them to death. It's not really the whole Stark family, but for the most part.
That's most of them. So, those are our picks for this week. So, our theme for next week, in honor of the Olympics starting soon, we are going to be talking about sports. Any sports-themed episode, or any character who sports was a heavy part of that. That's what we will be submitting for next week. If you all have any suggestions, be sure to send it to any of our social platforms, or at notanothertvpodcast@gmail.com, where you can send us anything else that you'd like. The poll for this week will be up on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and Blue Sky. And be sure to vote for that. You'll have 2 days to vote once the poll goes live. And without anything else, let's move on into the main part of our show.
I know we'll never grow old together, 'cause you'll never grow old to me. You're the pink in my cheeks, and I'm scared, 'cause that means I'm a little bit soft. But don't beat yourself up on me. It wasn't just the sun that I was hiding from. We were messed up kids who taught ourselves how to live, and I'm still scared that I'm not good.
Our first show for this week, we are continuing on with Adventure Time Distant Lands with the second installment entitled Obsidian, which was the Marceline and Princess Bubblegum centered special. So, what did you think of this?
Well, I love Bubblegum and Marceline, and I did appreciate that we got more of Marceline's history.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to see more young Marceline again. And I do love that towards the end, one of my favorite things towards the end was that their discussion about the monster that they were battling, whatever. And Princess Bubblegum is like, honestly, I was really hoping your song wouldn't work so that I could prove that I'm like really science savvy. And it's like so indicative of who they are that like it wasn't annoying, it was cute. Like she was like, I hoped your method didn't work so that my method could work. And Marceline is like, yeah, I'm not angry anymore. Like my music isn't angry anymore, so of course it's not gonna work. It was just a very cutesy scene between two people that truly love each other.
Yes.
And I love that we got all of that, like, canonical, we are in a relationship, we love each other moments with them in this episode.
Right. I love all of the domesticity in this episode.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Like, it's so cute.
So good. So good. The other thing that I really enjoyed was is the moment we realize that this is definitely in the future, because Finn comes out and he's an older man.
Right.
He's practically naked and he loses his towel, and it's just ridiculous and silly.
Right.
But I appreciated that he had a Jake tattoo on his chest.
Listen. So Finn is clearly in like his mid-30s or so.
Yeah.
Man looks rough.
Man does look rough.
He looks rough. I think this has not been proven out in the rest of Adventure Time, but I think we can reasonably assume that Jake is dead.
Yeah.
And Finn has taken it
I feel
hard.
like the tattoo was a tribute.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I feel like the tattoo is a tribute to him. Obviously, Jake would have been there if he wasn't dead, so, like, that really gives you the idea that probably dead.
Yes. He is not handling it well.
No, he doesn't even have his arm on. Like, bro is without his arm.
No, well, that's the crazy thing, because we saw in the series finale that he lost his arm. He lost, like, his good robot arm. And it just apparently stayed there.
Yeah.
Until it was found again in the future. So, like, I guess he just never made himself a new arm?
Which is fine. Like, you know, people are allowed to be, you know, have disabilities like that.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, I was a little surprised that, like, he didn't try to make another one of some kind or find some other alternative to having a robot arm.
I think it is also very indicative of how currently rough he is. But so there were two very excellent songs in this special. The first one, the song that Marceline sings to trap Larvo.
Yeah, it's so angry and sad.
So angry and
but
sad.
She's like,
and
but she's not singing it like she's angry or sad. So, like, it's really a weird moment. But at the same time, it really does break your heart because you're listening to the lyrics and you're like, oh, she was really going through it.
That is a diss track. Just fully a diss track.
Yeah. Full on, fuck you.
Yeah. No, I do love the line of you're kind of a dictator.
Yes.
That is the writers going like, yeah, we know. You all aren't telling us things we don't know.
Right. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We've been saying this all along as well.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
we hear you guys. You're not wrong. We also have known
Yes.
Yeah, I love the whole like the Candy Kingdom. Like she's like, your dumb Candy Kingdom. I don't care about it anyway. And I'm just like, yes. Teenage angst right there.
Gay people can't just break up normally.
Absolutely not. It has to be dramatic and over the top. Come on. It's not fun otherwise.
But like also imagine you're bubblegum and you know for hundreds of years that people have been singing this the song of someone breaking up with you publicly. That these people have been singing like, as part of their religious texts for years.
So yeah, so Glass Boy was the funniest thing, like him showing up and being like, oh my god, Marceline, oh my god, and like being all fanboy about Marceline, and I'm just like, this is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
But then like to find out that like he full on loves Marceline, worships everything she does, made his own guitar so that he could sing the song, and it's just like, oh, this goes deep. Okay. Like, it's not just this one kid who is obsessed with Marceline's song, they all sing the song.
Yeah. Speaking of which, a very good vocal performance from Michaela Dietz. It's a big Michaela Dietz week for me because I'll also be mentioning her in the show later on in the episode. But she's very good in this. She voiced Amethyst on Steven Universe. And this is so much in that same vein. It's just delightful. The scene where Glass Boy's decided that he's gonna be punk and emo like Marceline, and like writes his own, does his own like diss track about See Through Princess, which is filled with its own like wonderful language in that, and like very good wordplay on like See Through Princess. Like it's very good. But like that scene is just delightful, and it's especially paired with Marceline's look of like, oh Jesus, I am annoying. If this is what I sound like, I really am annoying. But and then the second song at the end of this episode, which is just the most lovely tribute to her relationship with Bubblegum.
Yeah.
It's so soft and it's so wholesome.
Honestly, if I wasn't shipping them before, I would have been shipping them after that song. Yeah. But I was already shipping them, so it doesn't matter. It was such a good song. Overall, just a very delightful episode. I loved getting to see more into Marceline's past and her mom, and then like her as an adult finding that message from her mom, like, was just so heartbreaking but sweet at the same time.
Yeah. All that stuff with the mom is so hard. You, as like someone who's not a child, can recognize a mom who's desperately trying not to get her daughter to see her die.
Right.
But that's not what a child sees. A child just sees a moment of angst and heartbreak. But like any adult, is just like, please just don't let this girl see me die. You know?
Well, and especially for Marceline, who already knows that she's part vampire, and so she's like, oh, my mom thinks that I'm this monster, therefore I must be a monster because my mom loves me the most out of anyone in the world. And like, that's just so heartbreaking to see her child brain come up with that conclusion to what her mom was doing. And it's just like, this drove who she became for the longest time.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so sad.
Yeah. Part demon, but yes.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I just wanted to say that in case someone decided to correct us. And a great vocal performance from Rebecca Sugar. Like, It's a really
Yeah.
good mom performance. But no, that
Ugh.
the shot of the soul drained wolf and the baby wolf walking up to it is haunting and deeply upsetting.
Yes.
The next special is Finn and Jake centered,
Oh, nice.
and you are not prepared for it in any way, shape, or form. So let's move on to our next show, Dimension 20, The Unsleeping City, Episode 4, Scramble in the Sewers.
Can I just say the idea of a rat king being a conglomerate of hundreds of rats stuck together? No, thank you.
Yeah, but also,
No, thank you.
that is a Rat King. Like, that's just very classical Rat King.
I know, but like, it's never. I don't know. Like, it's just the way it was explained in this episode. I was just like, it was very visceral in my brain, and I'm like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes it worse is the threat of adding Kugrash to the Rat King.
No, we don't need to add. Yeah, that does make it worse because, like, I was like, I love Kugrash. Please don't.
That's really the thing that takes it from okay, a bunch of rats in a trench coat to oh, this is an invasive organism that will like it turns it into something horrific, like a piece of horror.
Yeah.
All the while, the Rat King, comically stupid character.
So dumb.
The thing that makes the Rat King palatable is the amount that Kugrash hates him.
Yes. Like, Kugrash, technically, you are one and the same with this, my dude. And he's like, no, do not lump me in with these things. No. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Kugrash had been like, don't put me in with this vermin. Like, sir, you are part of the vermin. What do you mean? I could see Kugrash being like that, being like, I am better than them, thank you. We are not the same species.
I think the thing that makes this really enjoyable is just the amount of times you get to hear Murph say dumbass in that rat voice.
Yeah.
It's like that really like rat version of a Brooklyn accent, you know?
Yeah, the high-pitched Brooklyn accent. Mm-hmm.
It's so good. Yeah, this is a great battle episode.
I think my favorite part of the battle is to be fair, I really like Pete. So like this probably I went into it being like I'm sure Pete's going to do something really cool. Pete did do something really cool in this in this battle by summoning all the fires of New York City history, and I'm like, that is fucking amazing. Like, that is genius.
Right. No, that's the thing.
I love this.
That is the thing I really like about this episode of it. Really dialing into the powers inherent of a Vox Phantasma. You know, a voice of the dreams. A voice of the dreams of New York City. He can look into what people have been dreaming and like what people have been hoping. Like it's this inverse of like Kingston's powers. Yeah, he can be aware of all the people who've died in the fire, and he can be aware of like this one like Italian man who came over and was like, "I'm gonna make a great pasta or whatever it is," you know, like, and have that be so imbued as part of like what he does.
It's so, it was so epically cool. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is really showing what kind of powers certain character types in D&D can have.
Right.
And I loved it. It was just, so good.
Yeah, and that's buoyed by like his wild magic.
Yeah,
as just like a mechanic, is really effective.
Yeah, I also felt like the group came together really well for this battle, and that's always a fun thing to see when they actually, you know, are like, okay, you do this and I do this, and we will both manage to do the thing that needs to be done to accomplish what we came here to do.
Right, yeah. And there were like really good moments of strategy of like there were a couple moments where I think it was like Shaban being like, well, I can go around, but I won't be able to get up the wall. If I do that, I won't be able to go there. Mm-hmm. If I do that, you won't be able to do this. And like it's just really savvy game playing that I really appreciate.
it's definitely a far cry from how they were when they started Fantasy High season 1. Like these players have gotten so much better at being able to see the big picture and make moves based on that instead of just going from one move to the next, not thinking what could happen after that move.
Right. Well, and I think it is a good kind of commentary on like how good this battle episode is, where the players, it feels like they are accomplishing a lot, even though they haven't accomplished very much. And I think that is also helped by, and this is kind of what we said a couple episodes with Mutant Santa Melee, of the map is so wonderfully spread out and diversified, where there is a lot to do.
Yes.
You know, you have the Rat King, you have the Rising Water, you have the albino alligators. You know?
Yeah, I honestly there were a couple times I kept forgetting about the alligators, and then they'd make a move against them, and I'd be like, "Oh right, there's alligators also on the board."
Yeah.
Like we forgot here because I'm so focused on Rat King and the Rising Water because the Rising Water is also a hindrance to what they're trying to accomplish and could potentially cause them to lose health points. And so it's like, okay, we got to keep an eye on these things. And then out of the corner of your eye, you're like, oh, right, there's also alligators. I did appreciate that at the end, you know, Kagresh puts the crown on and just dismisses the alligators. He's like, bye.
And those alligators are so hungry.
They just want to eat.
Just a little snack.
Not today. Yeah, it was a very fun, eventful battle episode. It really shows just how much I love this season in particular because the story is good. Therefore, I'm super invested in every single battle episode we have. I'm super invested in what these characters are able to do, what they're doing, and like how it plays into the overall plot.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So, and again, my love of New York City is just enhancing my enjoyment of this season. Though you will never find me in the sewers of New York City. No, thank you. I will never go there.
I do love the commitment to how gross it is down there.
They could do a battle sequence in the subways, and I would be like, you know what? I could totally see this happening in the subway. No matter what kind of battle sequence it is, I'd be like, nope, yep, totally valid.
Totally.
Could totally see this happening.
I did love Brennan's dramatic mouse trying to get the wheel of cheese.
Yes.
So let's move on to our next show, which is Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, which is now streaming on Netflix, as opposed to Paramount Plus, who wrote the show off. But Netflix picked it up and dropped all 20 episodes on their service, which I hate. The show is very good.
They could have split it in half.
They could have. It's a very good season. It's a great follow-up season that has a lot of very timey-wimey stuff going on.
Nice.
So the second season finds all the kids from the Prodigy now serving on the Enterprise. Not Enterprise. They're serving on Voyager with Captain Janeway at command, and they are investigating a wormhole that connects to many years in the future. It has Chakotay on the other side, and they're trying to figure out how to safely access it. And the season carries on from there in really great Star Trek ways. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the season. There are a couple cameos, a couple legacy character cameos in this that I think a lot of people are going to like. And I don't want to spoil who any of those are, but they are so delightful.
Now, did you watch all 20 episodes?
I watched all 20 episodes. Oh, yes.
How did you have enough time?
I just took out some days, and I was like, we're just going to get through this, I guess. I really didn't plan to watch all 20 episodes. It just kind of happened. It is a very easy binge. I wish it wasn't a binge, though, but it works very well as a binge. Every episode flows into the next really well and really seamlessly. There's just some really great Star Trek stuff in this, in a very, like, Star Trek in, like, a kid font, you know? Or, like, preteen font. Like, but all of that's really good. Yeah, I like a lot of the voice acting in this. I like Ella Purnell, who's on Fallout and Yellow Jackets, is back in the season. Jamila Jamil is back as the big antagonist for the show, and she's very camp. She's very, like, big Saturday morning cartoon villain in a way that I appreciate. Nice. And she plays into that really well. Overall, it's just a delightful season. I hope people will go check it out. I have no idea if I'll see a third season of the show, just because Netflix picked up this season after Paramount dumped it, and this season was already fully made, pretty much.
Right. So Netflix didn't really have to put any effort into it.
Right. They just had to, like, put the minorest of backing behind it. But I have no idea if that will translate into them producing a third season.
It's also weird just to have a Star Trek thing on Netflix.
Right. That's the craziest thing in this song. Like, Paramount could have the second season right now when they don't have any other Star Trek happening at the moment.
Paramount, you're
it's
dumb.
Wild. I don't know if Netflix even legally can make a third season of the show.
Oh, you have a good point.
I think that they can pick it up and play it somewhere else, but as far as I know, all of those rights are still with Paramount. So I think something special would have to happen for Netflix to be able to make their own thing. Now, this was a co-production with Nickelodeon, so that could also be a big factor in that. I don't know. I should do more research into this.
Yeah,
it seems like a very squishy area.
Technically, I feel like Nickelodeon is under Paramount as well.
Yes.
Because all of Nickelodeon's programming is on Paramount. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you find out if you research it further.
Yeah. I would love to see a third season of the show, because
I've heard it's good.
What it sets up for the third season will be very back to form and for what it did in the first season, which I think could be very interesting. And as I mentioned earlier, Michaela Dietz is in this, playing a character, playing a Vulcan named Majel, which is a very good callback to Michelle Roddenberry. I appreciate that, and that also is a good performance. Even though I watched it, so I watched like the first half of this episode over like 3 days, and on like the fourth day, I was like, I can't take it anymore. I know that the voice I know. I know it's a voice I know. I can't figure it out. And I was like, oh, it's Michaela Dietz. Of course. Yes. Okay. It's a very toned down Michaela Dietz performance, but it's still undeniably her.
See, I'm the kind of person that I'm like, the minute I hear a voice and I'm like, I'm not sure who that is, but I feel like I know who they are, I'm looking it up. Like,
well, I was like, I know who, I can figure this out. But I would encourage everyone to go and check out the second season. If you haven't watched Prodigy before, go watch the first season. It's very good. So let's move on to our next show, My Lady Jane. Continuing our conversation from last week a little bit. I still have not watched very much of this. I made it up to the 5th episode. But Matt, you have watched the whole season. So tell me in oblique ways about this season.
I just love that the whole point of these 8 episodes is to take the reality of what happens to Jane Grey and flip it around and be like, no, that's not really what's going to happen to her. And I also appreciate the Ethian magic element of this whole series. It makes for very comical moments that I don't think are... I'm not 100% sure whether they're supposed to be comical or if I just found them comical because I just find people randomly turning into animals a major delight. But it it kept me on my toes the whole time. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I love the chemistry between Guilford and Jane. Like, I believed in their love. I believed in their growing commitment to each other. I love the insane pettiness of Guilford's brother and how hurt he is by the actions of Jane's mother. And like, it's a big family drama, and it's so funny because each person is looking out for themselves, not realizing they're destroying their own happiness by destroying other people's happiness. Like, it's just so ridiculous, but in the best way.
I love Guilford and Jane's chemistry in the show. They could have edged each other every episode by almost fucking,
Yes.
and I would have ate that shit up.
The other great thing that I want to mention about this show is we've taken King Edward and made him gay and had him full on make out with a character by the end of the series. And it's great. I love it. I love it.
Right.
I love when we gayify historical figures. Because more likely than not, they probably were.
That did bring up a point I wanted to mention, which is that I like a lot of the show very much. I like the Ethian slant on this. But if you're gonna have something that can so easily be allegory for queerness, you got to actually do queerness. You know? If you're gonna have the Ethians be kind of this, could potentially be a stand-in for queerness, you have to have one of them be gay. You have to have.
Well, I don't know if you've seen, I forget which episode it was in, but there's a moment with King Edward and his granny where she tells him that he's an Ethian, and he vehemently was like, how do you know? What do you mean? I'm not an Ethian. And it so personifies that whole fight or flight response that a lot of gay people have when someone calls them out on being gay and they don't want to be out yet. And they're just like, what are you talking about? How do you know? Like, it was very similar to that. So, like, I did appreciate that kind of comment. But yeah, there should have been way more queerness in this show. There really should have.
Yeah. There were a couple moments where I was like, is Susanna? Maybe.
It's very implied. It's never actually, like, implicit. Right. And so, like, I wish, or it's never, sorry. It's implied. It's never really, like, canonically said, yes, I am. But, like, she has a devotion to Jane that goes a little above and beyond.
I'm just going to say this. Susanna looks at Jane in a frankly gay way.
Yeah. Very much. She is undressing her with her eyes. But yeah. It's sad that the only explicitly gay character is the king. I loved his comment early in the series where he was like, in the season where he was like, you know, I always thought girls were like boys without dicks. And I'm like, no, sir, that's not how bodies work. No. And he's like, I'm definitely not interested in the girls. And she's like, okay. And his sister Mary can fuck all the way off. Her and Seymour can just go off and have their little love affair and be
That
back.
Woman is a freak.
She's insane.
She's the biggest freak I think I've ever seen.
It's fantastic. Such a good show. So funny, so ingenious. And I feel like for some reason, even though like rewriting history and doing plots along those lines is very common in not very common, but decently common in television these days, it still felt fresh and new. And I enjoyed that about it. Like, there's a moment where Jane is able to use her intelligence to try and get out of a situation that she's been put into, because Mary's obnoxious. And you see her, like, be able to be a smart woman and not have to pretend like she doesn't know what she's doing. And I love it.
No, that did make me think of there was a tweet I saw from Alison Herman, who's a critic at Variety, which was, do we have a succinct name for the great Bridgerton, Dickinson, the Buccaneers, Mary and George, My Lady Jane, Harlot's Core yet, or are we just going with cheekily anachronistic feminist costume dramedy?
Yeah.
Because we've done this too many times to not have a name for it.
The other thing I find really, really funny, so like, again, there's this woman on TikTok that I watch that breaks down British, Scottish monarchy, and French monarchy too. Like, she breaks down different monarchies basically, and family lines, and how everyone's interconnected. And it's so funny because like she'll make references to current television shows, being like, yes, that King George is also Hamilton's King George and Bridgerton's King George. Like, yes, these three King Georges are all the same person. Make of that what you want. And it's just so hilarious that we have multiple iterations of the same person and none of them are the same.
I did enjoy the Anne Boleyn shout out in like the fifth episode.
I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It did not feel like I was watching television for 4 hours when I watched the 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how enraptured I was, but also like how quickly the story flows and how smoothly it goes from one thing to the next. And again, I will say it again. Now his name like left my brain, but he is the perfect guy to play Seymour.
Dominic Cooper. Yeah, just
Dominic Cooper.
Just the slimiest,
so good.
Just the slimiest motherfucker.
Oh, so freaking good. And it's just, and the youngest, and Jane's youngest sister is, I fucking love her. There's a moment later in the season where her mom has basically talked trash to her one too many times, that she literally goes and sits next to Mary when she takes over the throne. Like, she literally is just like, well, fuck you, Mom. I'm gonna go hang out with the crazy bitch. Like, and it's just like, it's its own little comedy of errors. Like, it's not even the main plot. Like, this is just the side character in the background, and you're paying attention to her because she's so petty and so in your face. I love it. I aspire to be like Jane's little sister.
Well, let's move on to our next show. Star Wars The Acolyte, Episode 7, entitled Choice. So, I think this episode serves its function by telling us a lot of information. I felt underwhelmed. There's nothing specifically wrong with it. It's just not working on a level that I want it to.
That's fair. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't know. I just feel like I'm also just loving this show, and you're kind of like, it's okay. I totally understood Torben's mood this entire episode. Like, I get you, bro. 1, you're homesick. 2, you've been stuck on the same planet for 7 weeks with nothing happening. Like, I would be bored out of my fucking mind too, and be like, let's get this shit done and get out of here. And of course, because he's immature and inexperienced, he causes a whole mess of problems by being like that. But like, I totally understood and related to that. I was like, I get you, bro. Such a mood. Like, you don't want to be here. I've officially decided I don't like Indara. She's not a likable character, and I don't know if she's supposed to be.
I totally disagree. Like, she's the only one making good decisions in this episode, though.
That's fine. I just, overall, as a character, I'm just like, I don't like you. I think I still don't fully trust Soul. I really don't. Like, I just don't fully trust him. But I also kind of enjoy him a little more than her. And I think it's because I do relate more to the type of Jedi that is less all about the rules and more willing to use their heart every once in a while, even if it gets them into trouble. And I think that's probably why I'm like, I don't like Indara, because she's very much rules, rules, rules. This is what has to happen. You know, this is what we're going to say, because otherwise we'll all be banished from being Jedis, like blah, 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 blah. I get it, but I don't like it. I understand. Like, I was totally okay with Soul's decision at the end of the episode where he's like, I want to go before the council and tell them the truth. And she's like, the truth is this girl set a fire. And he's just like, sure, I guess. Like, that's not really the truth, but sure, okay. I guess we'll go with that. I understand why they didn't tell the truth, but like, I'm still kind of rooting for him to still insist on telling the truth at the end of this episode, even though I know that does not happen, because obviously 16 years later, they're in a whole big old mess because of what happened and what they told the Jedis. But I like episodes that don't have necessarily a lot of action, as long as they're giving us information that we need. And I feel like this was good, because this whole season we've been wondering what happened on Brendock, what isn't Soul telling, and now we know. So I feel like that, I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I felt like it gave me the information I've been looking for. And yeah.
Yeah, it's not dissatisfying. It's just not nearly as satisfying as it should be.
Right. I also will say it really frustrated me that the Jedi in this episode, and I think this also is why Indara really annoys the crap out of me, because she acts as though they were completely justified in what they did, because the witches were using magic, the witches were doing this, and I'm like, but they're not actually harming the children. You guys were assuming they were harming the children, but they really weren't. You went and invaded their land and their community and did not see yourselves as being the conquerors that were destroying an entire way of life. And I think that's probably also why I don't like Indara, because I'm just like, she's very much, well, we were justified in what we did. It wasn't, it didn't follow the rules, but we were justified. I don't agree. Because if you had just taken down your information and then taken that information to the council and, approached this from a different way, this would have been so much better. And again, Torben caused a lot of that problems, yes, but she further justified Torben's actions, if that makes sense. So it's like, I don't know. Both sides were justified in how they interacted with the situation, I guess. But ultimately, it started because the Jedi invaded their land and came in, was like, we're going to take your children.
Right, but also, like, she did not want to take the children. Like, she did not want that smoke.
No, she didn't. Which is, again, that's not the part of Indara that I'm upset about. I'm upset about the, like, once it happened, she was like, well, they fought back. So, like, of course we were justified in killing all of them. Were you, though? Like,
I'm not sure that's the argument she was making. Just in that there's a big mess, and you've already fucked up the quiche. You've already... Now you just gotta figure out what you can do with it. Can you make it into a new part, or is it just a broken thing on a dish?
Yeah, I don't know. I do fully understand now, though, why May especially doesn't like Soul, because she watched Soul kill her mother. Like,
right.
Point blank, saber through her gut. She did.
Yeah.
And the really sad thing is that the mother told him, I was gonna let you have Osha. You were gonna have the children, the child, because she wanted to go with you. And it's like, if you guys could have just stopped for a minute, you would have known that. It's not a black and white, one choice was better than the other kind of situation. All choices in everything that happened on Brendock were bad. There were no good choices made on Brendock. It's a very intriguing penultimate episode. I'm curious to see what they're going to do to kind of try to bring it home, for at least to conclude this season, in case they want to make it into a 2-season show, which is a possibility because Disney likes to pump things for all they're worth. So I could potentially see it getting another season. It's just it'd be interesting to see where they're going from this point.
Yeah, and there's only one episode left. So
Yep, and we still have to conclude what's going on with Chimere and with Soul running off with May.
Well, let's move on to our next show. My Adventures with Superman, Season 2, Episode 8, The Death of Clark Kent.
This one hit me. This episode hit me kind of hard, actually.
Yeah, this is such an effective episode.
Just the whole Brainiac trying to find Superman / Clark's weakness and like get it and like reliving some of those battle sequences and some of those moments. It's just so heartbreaking as someone who's a huge fan of Clark Kent / Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's rough. It's so rough. But also to see Kara feel, in a way, you could tell she was conflicted.
Yeah, and also just like the little moments of Kara humanizing herself or becoming more humanized as she spends time with like Jimmy and Lois.
She loves Jimmy.
She has such a crush on Jimmy. She's such. I love the commitment to ensuring that Kara Zor-El is a dork.
Also, I love the anime-ness of the artwork and storyboarding for this show, because I loved seeing like the big blocks of like dark pink on her cheeks and then Jimmy's cheeks as they're like shuffling their feet and like, you know, being all like obviously shy around each other. Like it was so adorable in the midst of this great standoff, so to speak. Like here's a little bit of moment for love. Like
And I love that people are just letting Kara believe that Jimmy is the leader of the planet.
Oh my god, that too. I was just like, leader of what planet? Does he mean the Daily Planet? Because even that's a lie. Or does he mean the whole planet? Because, like, that's the biggest lie, bro. Like...
And she just keeps saying it and no one corrects her.
The only semi-correction happening in this episode is Lois saying to Jimmy, the leader of the planet? Like, she's so teasing him so hard about it. And it's like, this is brother and sister behavior, and I'm here for it. Like, she's like, you're an idiot. Like, who's gonna believe that? Like, obviously Kara does. Yeah. She's like, you've got some explaining to do. I'm just curious to hear Clark's idea, like Clark's thoughts on it, because that would be hilarious. Also, just, it's funny because I watched this episode and then I turned around and watched Evil. So my double dose of Michael Emerson was just like peak this week. Like, Michael Emerson is perfect as Brainiac. Like, just so good. He has that conniving, slimy voice that like works well for villainy. And while I'm not overly impressed with this version of Brainiac, the voice is good. The voice is good.
It's like if a nerd was a villain. Like it's just like the biggest nerd was a villain.
Absolutely.
Like if that guy in your chess club was the bad guy. You know? Like it's just the casual menace that could just be brought out of that. Of just like, here's a very analytical look at this. And also, I would like to set the entire universe on fire. Just that kind of vibe.
Right. He's like, let's really break down everything about who you are, and I'm gonna use that to take over the world.
Yeah.
And like, I loved him like going through these different like fight sequences with Superman Clark and being like, he overpowered you and yet you still won. Like, this will not do. What is wrong? Like, he is so baffled by the concept that Superman can be probably the weakest guy in the matchup and still win. And that is the beauty of Superman. It makes no logical sense, but we love it anyway. And I love that that's like frying Brainiac's brain. Like he's just like, what am I supposed to do with this information?
And then that turn with Brainiac's voice coming out of Clark is just
so. Oh.
It is like watching something unnatural. Like it's like watching a dog walk on two legs. Like you're like, this isn't. There's some part of your brain that kicks into like cognitive dissonance, and you're like,
Yep.
I don't like this.
It honestly set my teeth on edge. Like I did not like it at all. I was like, please stop.
Well, and it's coupled with the blacked out eyes and the new costume with like the chin strap that like really takes it to that. No.
Yeah, and the like device. Well, not really. Yeah, it's device on the forehead.
Mhm.
Like it's just, oh,
They're just like, I don't like this at all.
It makes me unsettled.
Let's move on to our last show of the week. Evil Season 4, Episode 8, How to Save a Life. So I kind of adore this episode. Wallace Shawn was the perfect person to do this baptism. He was the perfect person for the show to get to do this baptism. Like, it's just so good. That was like Cheryl kind of like prodding things along, and Sister Andrea just being like, we have to do this. we really have to do this.
Yeah, Andrea's like, that is a demon child. We need to do this.
Yeah, but I do love I do love this episode. It's like a concept of like, okay, you have an Antichrist.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you baptize it? Like in like using the framework of like Catholicism as like your rules,
right?
What would happen? What would be the outcome of someone like handing you Damien from the Omen and being like, please baptize this child? How weird would that turn out? And I do like how it went.
I appreciate this show because it doesn't back away from doing stuff like this, where it's like it tests the limits of what we know has been done.
Right.
In regards to this kind of subject matter, right? So, like, you know, I love the whole duality of you get one perspective and it's clearly just a baby. Then you turn around and you've got Sister Andrea's perspective where she sees the demon. And so it's like, that is very disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see that ever again.
No.
And then you turn back to the giggling, cooing baby and you're just like, oh, it's so cute. Mm-hmm. But it's so wonderful that Cheryl's like, no, I don't care who you are, you need to baptize this child. She's like, get it done. Please, I am begging you. Yeah. She's like, I don't normally come talk to God and all this shit, but I need God to do this for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing that like really takes all of that over the edge is Leland realizing how monumentally fucked he is at the end of the episode.
Oh yeah, he like looks at the baby right before the big meeting with the bigwigs and the baby, and like to like, you know, solidify its antichristness. And he looks at that baby and he's just like, ah, fuck. Like he's like, Cheryl, what the fuck did you do?
Damn it, this baby isn't bad anymore.
He's like, I know you did something, Cheryl.
Yeah. No, and I love that. I love that last bit of the episode of Leland being the guy in like your corporate office who's just like, I fucked up part of the file. I just hope the only way I make it through this is if no one notices I messed it up.
Right.
Maybe right. I can just fake it till I make it. It'll be okay.
He's the software website developer who like coded something incorrectly and is not going to fess up to it.
No. Mm-mm.
He's like, let's see if they notice that there's something wrong. I'm not going to make them aware of the problem. But it was just so much fun to see Cheryl in this type of situation where she's like asking David for help, and David's like, why don't you go to your daughter? And she's just like, do you know the relationship I have with my daughter? Like, She's kind of like, you're the priest here. Like, my daughter can't do anything.
Again, I do have several questions about like Cheryl's motives and what she thought she was doing, because like she says that like one of the girls is being primed for something bad.
I think it was Laura. Like he thinks that Laura. She thinks that he tried to kill Laura.
Well, they tried to kill Laura, but like the other one.
Oh, right, yeah.
The one who's like big into wearing red recently, and you're like, you know, something is up, and it's gonna be bad. What is your end goal here? Like, what are you expecting from this?
I think, I mean, not to play devil's advocate, because I'm not a huge Cheryl fan. I mean, we've talked about this. But, like, I think genuinely, initially, her thought process was, I want to feel important. Because around the time that she started, shacking up with Leland, was around the time that things really started to fall apart with her and her daughter. And I think she just really needed to feel seen and heard and respected. And then it turned into, well, I can outsmart this stupid asshole. So she was doing things to like fuck with Leland. And now she's realizing, okay, this child is my grandchild, because it is part, the genetics are part Kristen's, and he is an Antichrist child. I don't want him to be the Antichrist child because, well, that's Leland's whole plot. And if I fuck over Leland, that's even better for me. I think she's really selfish. And so everything she does is for her own good. But she feels like her own good is for the good of her whole family. And that's not necessarily true.
I can buy that.
By the way, I talked myself into that conclusion as I was going. No, I do truly believe, like, initially she needed love, affection, and Leland gave that to her. And then it turned into, well, fuck you, you're an asshole, stupid head man. Let me see what I can do to fuck you over. Or it could just be nothing and the writers just don't know what to do with her.
I mean, that's also possible. And then you have, like, the whole other side of the episode with, like, David's weird vision trip.
Okay, so here's something that I was going to ask you about, because I'm trying to remember things that have been said throughout this season, but like he's referencing the other priest that David's talking to, his boss or whatever. It says that it keeps saying that's an AOL, and literally all I'm thinking is the stupid I Am Messenger service from when I was a kid, and I'm like, did they ever explain what AOL is? Like, I was like, did I miss that? I don't know.
They say it a couple times in the episode, but it's just like kind of like psychic static things that aren't the thing, but are like very that like someone like David can pick up on.
Yeah, and I kind of inferred that, but I didn't know if I just had missed something more specific. I was just like, but that's literally what I was thinking. I was like, that did you just make that up? Like, just making shit up over here.
And I think AOL is like a theoretical part of like whatever the term this is.
It might be, yeah. You're probably.
I forget
right.
what the thing they call it, the psychic whatever phenomenon this is, but
yeah, that whole part of the episode was interesting. I did really appreciate. So, there's the scene they go to try and find this guy, and they go to his apartment, whatever, and they meet up with his wife. And David's like, "Well, there's this school that we want your daughters to go to." and the woman's just like, okay, so I get why you might be talking about it, because like it's clearly like something to do with the church. And she looks at Kristen, and Kristen goes, I'm a mom with 4 daughters who love this school. And it's just like, and so then she just looks at Ben, and he's just like, I'm a teacher of science. I just really love science, and I'm like, Ben, you are not selling any of this lie. I was just like, God, Ben, I love you.
He's so great.
He's just like, oh, we're doing this weird thing where we're pretending to be something we're not. Okay, I'm not committing to this bit. He's like the petulant child. Like, he really is. He's like, oh, you want me to lie? Okay, I'm gonna do the most basic see-through lie you could ever come up with.
that whole plot line is so dark in comparison to like all of the wackier stuff that's happening in this episode. It's whiplash in kind of the best way.
It was very intriguing that like this guy seemed like an alternate universe version of David.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's I think what was really trippy about it. Like it was just like he's the same age, he looks somewhat similar to David. Like in another life David could have been this guy. Like it was so trippy.
Right. So I think that'll do it for this week. Nothing big planned for next week, but be sure to reach out to us if you have anything. So until then, Mads, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DorothyNYC89. And if you want to hang out with me on Tumblr, my Tumblr is MadsWorld15.
Nice. And you can follow me on Twitter at @DrewKoenig and pretty much everywhere else at Drew Koenig. You can follow the podcast at Not on the TV Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Tumblr, TikTok. Posting videos of the podcast throughout the week. Be sure to like and share it on whatever you're using these days. You can find previous episodes of the podcast on Apple and YouTube, along with whatever other podcasting device you use. Be sure to leave a review or subscribe. You can find previous episodes there and also at our Libsyn feed, libsyn.com /TV podcast. Until then, be sure to remember, don't go in the ocean. It's none of your business. Goodbye.